today we are really basically glad to have Rodrigo Lobo, who is the co-editor-in-chief for the International Journal of Innovation and Science. But actually, I would leave the floor to introduce him properly to Brett Trusco. So, Brett, are you there?
I am, but I'm not. I'm not going to put my picture up because I'm not looking good this morning. Yes. So, as some of you know, we founded the journal way back in 2008, I think. And you know, what we really thought about when we built it was the fact that innovation, and it was kind of around the whole founding of the IOIP, was that innovation was kind of a word that was being thrown around loosely. And some of you have heard my story where I basically say, you know what, the final straw was when there was an advertisement on TV that said, we're the most innovative fruit company. And I said, what? They make purple bananas now. And so I kind of just said, we've got to get control of it. If there's a best way to do a brainstorming session, if there's a best way to do something in innovation, we need to prove it and have the academics do their research, use academic rigor, that type of thing. So we started building. Building the journal. And about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, Rodrigo joined the journal as an associate editor. And Rodrigo has turned out to be really inspirational to the other associate editors. And after 15 years, I figured it was time for me to hand it over to someone else. And Rodrigo was the logical person because he's so passionate about innovation. He's got a great accent for doing innovation. And so this year, from June 30th or July 1 of this year to June 30th of next year, he and I are co-editors in chief of the journal. And then as of July 1 next year, Rodrigo will do it all by himself, and I'll take over the emeritus status, which means I'll just basically do whatever Rodrigo asks me to do to help him. And so I think now is a great time for me to just hand it over to Rodrigo to keep. So it doesn't matter what I was doing. What matters is what Rodrigo wants to do with the journal. It's essentially his journal now. And of course, as part of GIMI IOIP, it's officially our journal. And so I'd like Rodrigo to go ahead and tell us, what he's planning on doing with the journal, his leadership. He's always looking for more associate editors because for those of you who know about reviewing articles and stuff, it's a bit of a challenge these days. Not the same business we used to be in. So Rodrigo, I'm going to hand it over to you. Oh, and he's at Montana State University. So if anybody really likes to go trout fishing, he'll help them find a way. All yours, Rodrigo.
Thank you, Brett. Yeah, this is definitely a great place for fly fishing. And if you like the great outdoors, Montana is the right place to be. This is awesome. So as Brett said, I joined the journal a few years ago, and things seems to be moving in the right direction. And what I want to do is move forward with Brett's legacy, because he built a really solid structure and a journal that is a fast runner up. We are passing traditional outlets already in terms of publication rate, and our submission, the number of submissions and publications, we are below 20% for publications, which makes us really competitive, probably one of the most if not the most competitive journal out there. The IJIS, International Journal of Innovation Science, is part of Emerald Publishing, which is a reputed publisher, reputed scientific publisher. And we are at an impact factor of roughly 3.8 to 4.2. That depends on how you measure it. And as I said, publication rate of roughly 20%, slightly less than that. And that's really great. Now we are working on getting listed in more recognized indexes, such as the ABDC, but the next window is only in 2025. So, but we have that in mind. That said, I would like to start my talk today, my presentation, and I do appreciate and thank you all for being here. And just give me 1 second. Where am I here? I'm sharing my screen.
Can we, Larissa, sorry, Arila, can we start recording?
I believe the
Yeah.
recording progress. Yeah. You don't see my screen, do you?
No, not yet.
Okay, just a second. Here we go.
Great, we see it now.
Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Awesome. Good. So the idea of this talk is to bring up a little bit of technology forecasting and how relevant that is for corporate strategy. And the background of it all is innovation. And that's why I call it innovation-dependent trajectory. And that comes from an economy and technology concept of path dependency, okay? We wouldn't be able to be at the stage where we are without what happened before. And that's very true in economics and in technology. And I'm bringing the context of forecasting as needed in today's world as a corporate strategy, okay? For some reason, I can't move forward. Oh, here we go. So what we are covering today will be first, technology forecasting and technological futures. Next, we'll go with the discontinuity of the innovation cycle. I build a case where innovation is needed to build technological futures. And we are going to see some perspectives on innovation management and where discontinuity of the innovation cycle brings problems for organizations, for businesses. And we'll close with the perspective of innovation as a science, okay? So our first topic, technology forecasting and technological futures. As I said in the beginning, that's crucial for strategy and therefore strategic planning and strategic management. Innovation management itself and decision-making across various sectors. We know that technology, with the emerging technologies that we have out there, work is being impacted in general, right? And what we have to do about it. We know that technology is there, but industries are changing. For example, business in general, healthcare, energy, and government. They will all be subject to new technologies, and yet most of them are not prepared to the state of technology that we are facing today. So can you think what's coming up in the next years and how they are going to cope with that? Technology forecasting helps organizations to anticipate technological disruptions. It is not a matter of knowing what's coming up, but knowing how to cope, how to deal, how to incorporate what's coming up, okay? Nobody knows what's coming up. We don't have crystal balls, but we know that artificial intelligence is there, Internet of Things is there, and so on. And how do we bring those into our realities? We want to identify opportunities for growth because AI, for example, is creating a number of activities. I was in a seminar the other day about how to use ChatGPT for marketing purposes. It's amazing. It does the whole thing. Entrepreneurs can have everything from the business plan to the company's logo developed through ChatGPT and its add-ons. Allocate resources and develop capabilities, and that's an important distinction here. I believe you know you all know just a brief recap. Resources are something we own, and technology, and capabilities are something we can do. So how do we integrate those two things? We need resources and we need capabilities to get the job done, whatever that is. And finally, maintain a competitive edge in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. Artificial intelligence, for example, will not be the root cause of labor disruptions. The lack of artificial intelligence will be. Those who are not able to update their work skills and capabilities to incorporate artificial intelligence, for example, and other technologies, are the ones falling behind. We have technology replacing labor for years, for decades. Take the automakers, for example, all the robots with welding and all the kind of stuff, all right, for a long period of time. They've been around for, what, 3-4 decades already, okay? So that's not news. But the way that we are getting into, we are leading to what? The fourth industrial revolution. It's already there. And what are the technologies involved in that? This is what I'm talking about. I'm listing some here, but it doesn't exhaust those. So the first thing, Internet of Things, right? I speak to my refrigerator today. I bought an air fryer these days and I speak with the thing. You know, years ago, people would look at me and say, hey, there are doctors for that. All right. And today we got the whole thing integrated in one body. How do we bring that into the organizational environment? Artificial intelligence is, you know, it's at the top of the wave at the moment. And we have to learn how to accommodate artificial intelligence. And we know that it's going to evolve faster and faster compared to the point that it is today. Okay, machine learning, additive manufacturing, for example, 3D printing and extended reality or augmented reality, blockchain and cryptocurrency, biotechnology and nanotechnology, and autonomous vehicles and drones. Those are examples of technologies that are still emerging, okay, out there. And the reason why I'm bringing the idea of technology forecasting and technological futures is not to know that those technologies are emerging, but what we do with them, okay? How do we cope? How do we incorporate them into our scenarios? Moving forward, I'd like to give you an overview of technological forecasting methods. There are many. And the study that I found that adds more for us is from MIT. MIT guys put together, because it's really confusing. There's way more than we can think about forecasting. Okay, so if we got technology forecasting, we got families of methods. And the first one, perhaps the most widely used one, is expert opinion. For example, using Delphi to predict what's coming up, okay, to foresee. But it doesn't exhaust the theme. There are many, as I said, those are families of methods. Next, we have trend analysis, okay? The fourth industrial revolution technologies is well, I'd say more than a trend, but it could be perceived as such. Monitoring and intelligence methods, statistical methods, modeling and simulation, scenarios planning, value decision and economics methods, descriptive and matrices methods, and creativity. As you see, technology forecasting is something really wide, okay? And there are many forms. What's best? Well, it's hard to say. That depends on the situation, okay? But we can move in different directions. And that will lead us to this situation, this scenario. Technology forecasting applies to all purposeful and systematic attempts to anticipate and understand the potential direction, rate, characteristics, and effects of technological change, especially invention, innovation, adoption, and use. This is really critical because what we are trying to do, anticipate and understand where things are going to, so we can act accordingly. Therefore, what we want is a future-oriented technology analysis. One may say, but why? You are saying about future. Technology forecasting is pretty obviously towards future. Not necessarily. It could be present-oriented. What is out there? Well, it doesn't really make sense what something past-oriented unless we want to understand the path, the trajectory up to this point, okay? But we essentially do perhaps a little bit of present, which is, you know, somehow ineffective, but future-oriented, okay? So, technology forecasting, the rationale behind forecasting. As I said, it's an innovation-dependent trajectory to be here. So innovation implies in discontinuity. Once we have something and we innovate, that something is no longer there. It may be an incremental, a small thing, but the old version is no longer there. The innovation cycle, that's what brings continuity of the innovation activity. Therefore, organizations must be on the top of that. And my case here is that forecasting, technology forecasting, is able to anticipate technological futures and therefore maintain the innovation cycle running in a continuity of the innovation activity. Technology forecasting then foresee technological futures, and technological futures are anticipated by innovation, okay? As I said, the discontinuity replaces something, no matter what, an incremental, a radical, a disruptive, no matter what, when you got a new market with new product, new business model, and so on. Whatever was in place will no longer be there. And therefore, technology forecasting is a continuity strategy. That is the key reason why companies, why organizations in general should invest and should be on the top of technology forecasting. That said, critical for us is to understand the innovation cycle in organizations, and that's our next step, okay? As I said, we have 4 components in this presentation. The second one is the discontinuity of the innovation cycle. So we do have innovation management. Pay attention to the arrow, we're moving forward, okay? Innovation management that will bring us the innovation cycle. And finally, we'll have technology forecasting and technological futures as part of our corporate cycle. In that direction, I developed an in-depth study in 2 groups of organizations. And this is what I'm showing to you, the outcome of it. This is simply too extended, too extensive. I studied 2 groups. The first group I called Alpha Group, which were mainstream industries, banking, construction, energy, and so on. Those companies or those industries have a management model usually conservative. Banks, for example, they are essentially conservative, not necessarily in bank security, okay? That's a different thing. But bankers are traditionally conservative. But those industries in general are. Energy, not as much, but it's also in the mainstream. So conservative priorities are established based on financial return criteria, regulatory compliance, and governance. Efforts are reactive and not very aggressive, and are limited to improve their performance within the mainstream parameters. The second group I call Beta Group, and that was essentially high technology companies. Yes, some of the big tech are here that I use in this project. I spoke to people, surveyed, and so on. And grouping a huge amount of information in a few bullets here, what do we have? First, the big difference in the management model. Those are dynamic, agile, or nimble, and aggressive, extremely aggressive. An idea is, evidence of that is, where are the big tech companies today? If you take the largest market cap in the planet, from the 5 top market caps, from the 5 top 4 are big tech companies, okay? And second, companies are in industries that are progressive by constitution, where innovations are not only stimulated and sought, but also expected by stakeholders. Not only big techs, tech companies in general, okay? It is pointless to bring more of the same. Therefore, innovation is part of their DNA. So, in this study about discontinuity of the innovation cycle, what are the main conclusions, the key outcomes that I have, okay? Where does the interruption of the innovation cycle happens? In the Alpha Group, as I said, the mainstream, We have one, the perception that products or activities will not have an adequate financial return. That means an insufficient of business case. Business case is the primary reason to do something. I'm not saying that we should not take into account a business case. Yes, it's needed. We need a positive business case, but there are more variables involved. Next, compliance with regulations rather than a superior performance. And that's very different, particularly in entrepreneurs. The mindset is different. And frequently, the regulations are not up to the technology available out there. Okay, so we gotta adjust, and therefore this can pose a major barrier to the continuity of innovation cycle. Constantly meeting regulatory goals by performing adequately while inhibiting innovation and technological advancements. That's a matter of priorities, okay? So what those companies essentially do, they prioritize regulatory goals. They do have high performance, but not astonishing as the technology companies. Fourth, concentration of decisions on innovation in a small group of people, exposing the risk of subjectivity or absence. And this is a very important characteristic of tech companies, including big techs, a flat organization, okay? The decision-making process is really streamlined, really fast. And a lot of people are empowered in their, in their sectors, in whatever they are doing. The word JTBD comes from this, the job to be done. So those people are empowered. People in tech companies are empowered to do that. Conservative governance inhibiting efforts for innovation. That's a major thing, especially in family-owned business, traditional businesses, and so on. Okay, but those are the conclusions coming from the alpha group. Remember, I'm talking about the interruption of the innovation cycle. In the beta group, the high-tech companies, this was more complicated. Getting to conclusions, we got more sparse data, okay? But getting to conclusions about discontinuity, about the interruption of the innovation cycle. First, the potential imprisonment in existing processes, the maintenance of the status quo. And that's virtually for any industry, but particularly, it's a particular threat for high-tech companies or tech companies in general, okay? What we have to do, what is my status quo? I'm doing well in what I'm doing. Why should I change? That is a risk, and it is still there. Poor management of technology portfolio and R&D. R&D is crucial. Well, we are the innovation community, right? And we know the importance of R&D to move forward. So how we manage R&D? How do we create our technology portfolio? What technologies we need to move forward? That's why I'm talking about technology forecasting. Third, collapse of factors associated with innovation, such as business plan, marketing plan, and financing. If we don't have a successful business case here, okay, a positive business case, or if we don't have a solid portfolio, technology portfolio that put together an efficient business plan, well, the result may be disaster. Take examples like Theranos. Okay, what happened, the blood testing company, and so what happened there? At the end of the day, what they were doing, well, what they developed simply didn't work. I know there's more, water under this bridge, much more than that, but in a few words, I'm using the example to make this point. Fourth, what I described as institutional cholesterol, which leads to the accommodation to what is being done and to the production model. So you got somehow, it's a sort of lock-in, okay? You were stuck in that model, and production's model, similarly to business models, must evolve as new technologies come up, okay? That's what when I use the word cope with what is coming up. 5, accommodation to an established model and or a model of great commercial success. This is very related to the first point. If we are successful in what we are doing, change is harder. So you need a very strong mindset to say, okay, let's get out of this. Let's discontinue what we are doing, even though that's successful, and that's not an easy decision to make. Okay, so how we make the decision in light of upcoming technologies or in light of our technology portfolio. And finally, moving away from innovative thinking, particularly among the leadership. And this is a problem. Leadership has the power to get a firm stuck in one point. So innovative thinking must be part of the firm's culture in order to absorb upcoming technologies. Technology forecasting must be part of this mindset, and therefore from the innovative thinking. Okay, so now we got a panorama on this, the conclusions, and so on. Let's move forward to the next topic, which is innovation management perspectives. And to start that, I want to go briefly to what I call as the dialectics of disruption. That's a fancy name that I adopted from the Academy of Management, a presentation that I saw there from Harvard guys. So this dialectics, where does the whole thing starts? So I put together this figure here. Hopefully it will make sense. The whole thing starts with the Schumpeter's creative destruction 100 years ago, right in the 20s, when he came up with that idea and the theory of economic development, and his later works, the long waves, etc., the technological paradigms, etc. So we have, from this rationale, innovation types. Why is that? Do we always have the creative destruction? So two main lines, two main streams came up from this. The stream of the discontinuity that is closely related to Schumpeter, or the competency destroy. While they are somehow connected, they are two different theories that walk on the same direction. And they are both seeking for reasons, and that was at the very root of the study that I showed you with the alpha and beta groups. We have a managerial response for those scenarios, and one is the identification of blind spots, and the other one is from the economy or economic perspective of creating incentives. As I said, in certain groups of people, innovation is not only a mindset, is somehow expected by the stakeholders. That brings the rationale of the path dependency. This dynamics brings the rationale of path dependency that I'm using here with innovation. And that gave us two perspectives, the supply side architectural innovations and the demand side disruptive innovation, okay? Really solid theoretical background behind it based on deep study in industry. And that will lead us to dilemmas, essentially, as Clayton Christensen brought up. We are talking about exploitation and exploration. That's a major debate in academia about that. And it makes total sense for industry. For example, if we have an automaker, on a year basis, we have what? Incremental innovations, okay? So we are exploiting the future with those little changes. And every 5, 6, 7 years, we got a whole new thing with new technology incorporated and so on. And even a paradigm shift, for example, moving towards electric cars. That's the exploration. What's our dilemma? What are we going to prioritize and how we are going to address both? And this brings up to integrated product development and insulation from main customers, which may be a big threat, a huge threat for us. The confluence of those, we cannot insulate from main customers, although main customers may be risky by nature, but that's a different story. And that's what brings us disruption. Okay, what is the disruption? Disruptive innovation and so on. It's fancy words. If you go to California, Silicon Valley, all that area, disrupt. What is that? Essentially, you got a new technology using in the market, right? So the discontinuity is technology-based. So hence, once again, technology forecast. Where does disruption happen? Essentially in those two places, okay? When you use the supply side and the demand, architectural or disruptive innovation. So disruption, what we have here, is it descriptive or is prescriptive? Well, that's a bit theoretical, I understand that, but we need that background in order to move forward and understand. Are we trying to explain something? That's the rationale of descriptive, or are we trying to make suggestions, guidelines for something? That's the rationale of prescriptive theories, okay? So the disruptive model is not particularly successful, different from what a lot of people think. And why is that? The baseline hazards, incumbents may win or lose. Essentially, while I'm talking about technology forecasting, I'm not talking about pure and simple futurology, all right? Of course, we want to mitigate risk, right? With innovation, what we do, we want a solid business case. We want to generate value. Value creation is at the bottom line of it all. But the fact is, things may work or may not work. Apple, for each gadget that it puts out there, 5 or 10 didn't work. So incumbents may win or lose. Predictability, can we tell before the fact that incumbent will lose? If we could, that would be worth a lot of money, wouldn't it? I would be very happy with that. But the fact is we can't. We do all the efforts that we can to mitigate the risk, including forecasting, including anticipating technological futures, but nothing is assertive. Predictability is questionable in this case. There's a huge amount of risk involved. And actionable, can managers, inventors, or innovators do something about it? Well, they are pretty good in creating things, inventing things, and putting things together incrementally, disruptively, architecture, radical innovation, etc. But to what extent that is in the power of managers, right? What if you bring up a product that came up from, millions and millions of dollars of research incorporating state-of-the-art technology, and yet people simply doesn't buy or don't buy? Then what we're going to do? Our mitigation efforts, will go away. So prescriptive, should managers, inventors, or innovators do something about it? First, can they do something, or should they do something? If they should, what should they do, and when should they do? Okay, so that is critical to understand this rationale of disruption. Sometimes you just let things go. You bring up all the innovation and so on. When ChatGPT came up, OpenAI was, positioned in a way. OpenAI used to be a nonprofit. Now they turn into a for-profit. I'm really looking forward to the IPO, but that's a different story. But this is the thing. It changed, it shifted its stream, its direction. Okay? So what is disruption good for? It's not about doing something. Okay, and this is important. It's about staying there after doing something. And this is the trick. So a lot of companies go up there. It's like a musician, a new, pop singer with a hit song that stays up there in the top 5 on the Billboard for 2 months and then goes down. And that musician, that singer, that pop artist cannot launch anything to replace the past success. What are we going to do to stay there? Incumbents, it's an eternal vigilance is the price of survival, eternal vigilance. That's the thing. Remember the cholesterol, the institutional cholesterol I mentioned? So you got to be vigilant. You got to know what's coming up. You got to essentially be alert to what's coming up and how you are going to use it to stay alive. And newcomers and startups, they got the sweetest taste of the cake. Jack Welch once said, Jack Welch was the mythological CEO from General Electric. He said, my major, the major threat I perceive are not my direct competitors now, is a company, 1 year from now, is the company that doesn't exist today. So those will bring the real disruption. Disruption is a scientific relevance of the theory, how new technologies come to market, the nature of product innovation, new customers, new architecture, new business model. What is that nature? And what differs companies from models, the capabilities and incentives side organizations. We spoke about resources and capabilities. Observe that we shifted from resources to capabilities and get the economic perspective through incentives inside organization. And this is actually the key. Okay? So, in the perspectives, now let's see a few of those theories. I got a few slides about it just to give you an overview so you understand a little more how those innovation management perspective process within firms, within companies. And the first of those is what is called the congruence and ambidexterity perspective, which states essentially this is the systemic approach, and it has 4 factors of congruence that higher performance is directly related to culture, work, structure, and people. So you have strategy that take those 4 factors into account, and those will lead to superior performance. But remember, we are covering innovation management perspectives from the discontinuity point of view, the innovation management or the innovation cycle discontinuity point of view. So where does discontinuity happens here? Whenever you interrupt any point of this flow. This is systemic approach, okay? You got an input strategy that takes those factors into account, and the output is performance, higher performance, okay? I worked years for Accenture, and that was at the very core of the company's offerings. Next, still related actually to this, we have what? Structural ambidexterity. Remember, we are talking about congruence. Still ambidexterity, remember ambidexterity, the ability of working with multiple scenarios, at least 2 scenarios at the same time, innovation, incremental radical innovation, or short-term and long-term, and so on, okay? That's the ambidexterity. It came from, the etymology is your ability to write with both hands, so your ability of doing 2 things at the same time. So we got the rationale that I touched before of exploitation and exploration. So exploitation and exploration should be addressed simultaneously in organizations. And the failure to success comes from size that leads to structural inertia. The bigger the firm is, frequently the more difficult things are. That's why big techs have a huge advantage over traditional large organizations. Age leads to social inertia. The youngest, take the entrepreneurial mindset. And it happens to us as humans. The older we get, the more difficult it is to change our mindset. And success leads to pride and arrogance in a number of times. And a number of American firms tasted this bitter, proved this bitter taste of the arrogance, and some of them are no longer business. For me, the classical example is Kodak. How could somebody like them, with something around 2,000 patents, virtually a monopoly in that film industry and so on, fall behind with a technology that they created? So they were good in anticipating future, or a digital image that popped up in the 70s, right? From them, and they kept in the drawer, said, you know what, we're doing so well in our industry, why should we change this scenario? So the structural ambidexterity we have this chart of the organization evolution, and we show us the perspective of exploration and exploitation. Remember that diamond with the 4 factors in the middle that were the work, culture, work, structure, and people. They are right in the middle here. Okay, and when we have discontinuity, when you are working in the exploitation and exploration, variation and rotation is key, and our selection fails. So the whole cycle is discontinued. The next perspective, the disruptive innovation, and this is widely known. Okay, that's the explanation of disruptive. So we got product performance and we got time. And performance, the customers are willing to pay for, goes up over time. And we got a high end of the market and a low end of the market. And the incumbents' trajectory, they are sustaining their position. And they come to a point where they are serving the high end of the market. Serving the low end of the market become too expensive. It's not, the business case is not as strong. And they created a structure that they are simply not competitive enough to be at the low end of the market. That's where entrants come up. That's where the disruptive trajectory come up. They replace the incumbent from the low end of the market, but observe, they are going up here. They'll pass the mainstream and eventually they will be at the high end of the market. The key is to maintain that, right? But that's not very simple. When does this discontinuity happen? When those trajectories are interrupted. Whether it's the incumbent or the disruptive trajectory, it doesn't matter. The sustaining or the disruptive doesn't really matter, right? If it's interrupted, we have the discontinuity of the innovation cycle. Those who are in the sustained trajectory doesn't mean they don't have to be innovative. They have to be actually more innovative than the entrants to sustain their position, but that's not always the case. Next, we have just a portfolio, a typology of innovation strategy. I'm not going to detail, but essentially it's the typology, the types of innovation combines 2 things, the business model and technology. If we have existing business model and existing technology, we have a routine innovation, sometimes or frequently referred to as incremental. New technologies and new business model, we have radical. New business models and existing technology, that's where disruptive happens. And finally, architecture, where everything is new. When discontinuity happen? When we simply stop bringing new business models or new technologies. Then it's pointless to foresee technology. Next approach, widely known, really recognized, managing innovation or innovation management per se, as it's called. And that's the famous model, search, select, and implement, adopted by the widest range of companies. Search, select, implement. That will bring new knowledge into the firm that will create learning. And then that will feedback the cycle again. Search, select, implement. Implement may be acquire, execute, launch, or sustain innovation. Key is learning. If learning is interrupting, if the firm is not learning from that, end of the road. We do have discontinuity. Another approach, I'm almost there, only 2 to go in the approaches, is widely known as well, almost a fad these days, which is open innovation. That really explains the Silicon Valley, okay? The bottom line of open innovation is the mobility of resources, okay? And the mobility of capabilities. Working on innovation project. This chart is well known, okay? That's Harry Chesbrook, who is, who coined the expression open innovation. Those little circles are essentially research projects. And the dotted line you can see is the boundary of the firm, okay? And you can see that we got some circles within the boundaries of the firm or outside the boundaries of the firm. And we got really a division line of research and development of products bringing new product, service, whatever, into the market, okay? Key for open innovation, the mobility of resources and capabilities. You don't have necessarily to have them at home, in the house, within the firm. You can use external as well. So discontinuity, whenever this is interrupted, when we don't have that flow of resources and capabilities anymore. Okay, that's why more and more firms don't really have those research labs and so on. They are still there. I'm not saying they're not, by no means, but not as representatively as they were in the past. And the last approach is a little more difficult to understand. That's the multi-level transition that was created based on the transition of social technical system of our society to sustainability. Okay, that's the Dutch guys that developed this in England. Okay, especially Manchester and Sussex and those places. And they create with the rationale, yeah, I know this is a bit interesting chart. They call it technological niches. What is that? The firms itself. Well, research labs when they are available, open innovation, etc. Okay, so the technological niches are responsible for creating innovation and bringing them into the social technical system. That's a fancy word for the marketplace, our society, right? And then once they are here, you see those little arrows are the innovation projects. They go up to this called the social technical regimes. The innovation is being absorbed, okay, from the institutions and sciences. New policies are developed, technology is implemented, and so on, and get to a point in which the landscape, the social technical landscape, simply adopts that new innovation, the new technology, start using that, and so on. This is somehow what's happening with ChatGPT or artificial intelligence today. We're clearly seeing that moving forward in this path here, although it's not very easy to understand this chart, but that's, you know, how it's expressed. And getting into this social technical regime where the institutions are. For example, our policymakers, our lawmakers, and so on, are not able to create a legislation that fully address state-of-the-art technology, no matter what, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and so on. But it's moving forward. It will happen. In this case, it's simpler to see discontinuity. Essentially, we stop innovating at technological niches. The firms and so on don't innovate anymore. Okay, that's where it happens. So this whole thing leads to our final approach in this presentation, which is innovation as a science. And that's the very core of IJIS, the International Journal of Innovation Science, okay? Innovation was widely regarded as an art, and it is an art associated with a science. How do we translate that philosophical thought? Well, an art was more based on intuition and qualitative rationale, while a science is bringing to the realm of the quantitative analysis, the whole analytics, and so on. And it got a lot of efforts going on in this direction. And how does it processes? First, innovation science, a crucial role in guiding business, governments, and organizations, drive economic growth, solve complex challenges, and improve the quality of life. All right, that we are in a very high-level perspective here, but that's true. A rationale in business, as I said, I work for Accenture, but before that, I worked for a company that was acquired by DuPont. Both of them were like paranoids for dashboards. We're in business, right? We're managers. We are, running organizations. We measure things, period. If we don't measure things, we don't know the progress of things. We don't know how it's going. And I'm not talking about inhibiting innovation at all. We are just talking about understanding the effects of innovation and capitalizing through value creation of innovation. Okay, that's the whole rationale of innovation science. Next, provides insights into how innovation can be fostered, managed, and harnessed to address pressing global issues and opportunities. So, pressing global issues and opportunities, that's cool, right? Kind of theoretical. Essentially, how we are going to use that favorably for us? For firms, how can we move forward? We still live in the Western civilization, and growth is the bottom line of it all. Oh yeah, some people are saying it's not sustainable, etc. Totally agree with that, but yet we are technology dependent. Hence, we are innovation dependent to solve the problems that we have today, okay? And this will be a major thing. Some people say we got to change culture and so on. Yeah, consumption habits, all that kind of things. Very true, but technology has a central role in that all, and therefore innovation. And third, research and practitioners of innovation in innovation science work collaboratively to advance our understanding of innovation dynamics and contribute to the development of innovation strategies and policies. We have to cope with what is coming up. Right in the beginning, I spoke about the fourth industrial revolution technologies, right? Industry 4.0 technologies. Some people are already talking about 5. Okay, oh man, I'm getting there. But this is the thing. How do we understand those? How do we foresee and develop the ability to assess the impact and how we are going to incorporate that in our daily lives, not only our corporate lives. You know, technology changes our life in general, right? And this is what we're talking about. So researchers and practitioners have a central role in that perspective through the science of innovation. So another great example that I love, ISO 56000. That's an attempt. It's at the very core of addressing innovation as a science, okay? Because it established essentially an innovation management system. I'm not talking about the 56,000 family here. There are, you know, the guidelines norms and the requirement norms, which, by the way, there's one requirement norm, and that's pretty much an ISO standard. Okay, that brings the standard for audit, okay, the audit standards. If you have audit standards, you can measure whether you have that norm implemented or not. Otherwise, you have guidelines for best practices, which is good, but it's non-certifiable. You cannot certify if you don't have a requirement norms. But that's a different story, okay? The rationale of the 56,000 is essentially related to innovation science. So a series of standards that bring the best innovation management practices and can be used for the design, development, validation, and search for innovation applications. Remember, I'm talking about science here. It is applicable to organizations seeking to many things. I grouped in 3. First, implement an innovation management system. I want to manage innovation. I'm working this very moment with a major oil and gas company in this project, okay? We passed already the implementation plan of the 56002, and we are now developing something related to how we are going to measure innovation in each sector when it happens. Improve the ability to manage innovation activities. Yes, the norms will improve that. They address things from ideation and partnerships and all that kind of stuff. And really important, as an advisory or consultancy in innovation management organization, okay? And the 56,000 has a series of principles, and here they
Rodrigo,
are.
before you go, Rodrigo, I just want to give you a heads up. We are at 9:57.
I know.
We got...
Yeah, thank you. This is my last slide. Okay, so the 8 principles of innovation science. So realization of value. Innovation is pointless if it doesn't create value. Future-focused leaders. I'm talking about technology forecasting. That's a mindset and starts in the whole organization, the DNA, the culture, and the leaders. Strategic direction, culture that will be implemented, exploiting insights, managing uncertainty, adaptability, and finally, systems approach. We are addressing innovation from the systemic perspective, okay? And that's pretty much what I had to say. You know, that's
great, Rodrigo.
Good timing. Good timing.
That's perfect. So why don't we stop your presentation and we can do some Q&A and everything else. But first, just want to make sure it's 9:58 for those who have to leave at 10 o'clock. please feel free to drop off. We'll continue with a few questions with Rodrigo and keep this discussion going. So thank you, everybody, for participating on the GIMI Think Tank. And as you know, we'll have this event every week, and we talk about interesting topics. Today, I'm talking with Rodrigo Lobo, and it's about technology forecasting and the importance of technology science as an input into strategy and future thinking and all that. Rodrigo, let me just ask some questions to you. First of all, very interesting presentation, a lot of great ideas, a lot of frameworks inside there, all being brought together from Clayton Christensen, from all the different gurus of innovation, and it's quite coherent. Couple of things. I mean, I was at Motorola, and Motorola CEO went on to work at Kodak to help Kodak become a digital company. And we have all struggled with the fact that it's very hard to manage this the power of and meaning that we have to exploit and we got to explore. The power of and meaning that we got to make money from our core business and try and start building new businesses that don't make a lot of money and therefore they don't look interesting. We have struggled with all this before. So what are the things that because I've been in industry, we understand what we're talking about. The trying to manage both is the objective. And the trouble for us when we were in industry was, how do you do that when you have an organization that you got to say, stay disciplined, stay operational excellent, stay all that stuff. And at the same time, consider the analog to digital shift. Consider the fact that we've got new technologies coming from different paths. Consider that now there's a new segment of a market emerging that's interesting, but doesn't give you a lot of money. And so the balancing act for business was always the income statement, the profit at the end of the quarter, end of the year, which drives people's thinking on one side. And on the other side, you have to manage the long term. So do you have guidance on or do we have breakthroughs? Because I believe the leaders of companies understand that issue. And they choose to do one or the other because it's easier to manage organizations by saying, let's focus on the near term, or let's focus on the long term. We separate organizations to do that. But the reality is we somehow have to be ambidextrous and do both. So do you have a recipe, first of all, for leaders who are driving big organizations? How do you divide yourself up, percentage of time, and how do you make sure that when you're talking about this thing, you don't confuse the other side of the organization? When you talk about this thing, the other organization stops working on the near term. So help us with that, Rodrigo. That's the real challenge that I've seen in managing.
Yeah, I've seen that too. If I had the exact answer for that, I would be probably a billionaire at this point, right? In my opinion, it starts with the mindset. How do you persuade your board of directors that is going to be directly in touch with your shareholders, okay? The pressure, and not only shareholders, stakeholders in general, okay? That pressure for immediate results. If you take the United States, there is this quarterly culture here. So it's really hard to cope. Hence, incumbents or those new entrants to whatever have more space in this country because they are not locked in that mandatory rule from the quarterly results, okay? Coming from shareholders, the board, stakeholders, society, etc. But there must be some persuasive argument there to say, okay, that's what we are doing. And if you provide evidence that, okay, we got you guys coming in this direction and we got to do something about it, that will develop a rationale of saying, okay, doing something, we are acting reactively, all right? Therefore, they are already passing us. We got to be upfront. We got to create the trend. We got to bring the new technology. So this is the trick of it all. It's not magic portion, okay? So
let's go back with quick back and forth, short answers, quick questions back and forth so we can fight it out a little bit and so we'll get the audience excited, interesting. Yeah. Second question I have is this thing called technology road mapping. And technology road mapping was probably invented at Motorola and technology forecasting was invented over there as we look at the future market trends, to the product trends, to the technology that will feed it, and then all the different types of technologies that could be used to make what we had to do. I worked on lithium-ion batteries. I also work on supercapacitors. One of the challenges with technology forecasting as it emerges is timing. The timing is we always think things might happen faster, so we start talking about it. So I was talking about lithium-ion batteries in 1994, and we built the batteries for cell phones, but we didn't think the cars were going to come for another 20, 30 years. And so we didn't think of the car industry as the next big place to move the lithium-ion batteries. And then Elon Musk comes and surprises us by pulling the industry forward. So one of the challenges that we all face as scientists, technologists, or even strategists is trying to nail the timing right. And when we miss the timing, we get criticized heavily. It's not that we didn't understand it. We know timing is a complicated thing to figure out. Then when will this technology be ready? Our friends at Google screwed up also with Bard. They had Bard, and it was their AI. They could have replaced it earlier. They didn't. They waited a little bit more. Then the ChatGPT comes to the market, and Google gets slapped by $100 billion on the stock price because they were late to the game. So the timing issue is, how do you have an idea? Do you have a suggestion on how to manage and setting expectations on timing, because you can miss it?
So forecasting is an ongoing thing. Okay, it doesn't happen in a moment. It's not an event. It's a systemic thing that is always in progress. Therefore, it's not stopping. But there is always an additional perspective. Remember, we address innovation as a science, but we cannot leave the art perspective behind. I got in this research work, one of the guys that I work with for quite a few months was the chief engineer at Apple, a fellow that was hired directly by Steve Jobs, and I was the chief engineer for the iPod project. Okay, iPod, we are talking about 20 plus years ago. The little thing, music you put in your pocket and listen to that, how cool that is. And that, from those days, they came up with this rationale. You know what? We got to listen to our customers. We got to understand what they do, what they want to buy, and so on. But very frequently, they simply don't have an answer for that. They don't know what they want. And therefore, we have to tell them. So that is a huge risk component. And that's why I said, when they launch one successful gadget, 10 others are left behind because they didn't work. Nobody bought, nobody cared, and so on. So they must keep evolving with that, and that costs a lot of money. That's why new entrants struggle very frequently. So new entrants need a really disrupt, a new game-changing idea in order to move forward. But addressing specifically the issue of timing, okay, there is, let's not think as an event. Let's think as a continuous thing, okay? An evolving, a systemic approach is always in motion, and that will probably mitigate our risk.
I like that. When we were at Motorola, we were there. We knew what was going to happen. We imagined the future. We forecasted the future. We created the technologies. But what our problem was timing. Timing was always wrong. We invented the first lithium-ion battery Corvette car even. We did everything in 1995, 1996, 1997. But the world was not ready, or the technologies were not ready, or something else was not ready, but we were able to forecast what was going to happen. I've got another question for you.
Yeah.
In this technology forecasting and everything else, the brain gets easily confused in terms of saying, okay, there are 5 different technologies that could be input into being able to create the next energy source or the next big thing. So right now, there's a big excitement around this area called green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is kind of like a little bit not sure how we're going to make this thing work, but everybody's making a bet on it. Green hydrogen is essentially solar energy, wind energy, converts the electrical energy from solar to electric, and then from electric, it produces hydrogen through hydrolyzers. And we don't know the economics of all of this just yet, whether it'll be low enough cost and everything else, but we're all converging, whether in Brazil or whether in Morocco or whether in South Africa or in Europe. Everybody's after this space. It's a little bit of a hyperbola kind of thing, but everybody's excited about it. $6 trillion, it's about $1 trillion of investments about to happen. The biggest investment opportunity in the world, right? That's happening right now. In that situation, how do you get governments, how do you get regions to kind of align around what we are saying is think about the future, as you said, future mindset, strategic alignment, managing the risks of what might happen and what might not happen, recognizing some things will happen faster or slower, and keeping these guys not to give up too early, and not to have them keep on pushing for too long, and money is lost. And that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Is we need to somehow be able to know how to push hard enough, but we also need to know when to let go. And there's a huge thing going on. So just thoughts on this huge opportunity that's emerging that everybody can talk about, because AI, that happened 10 years ago. From between you and I, if you look at technology forecasting, they forecasted this 10 years ago. So we shouldn't be surprised what's happening now. We should be talking about what's coming next and what's in the technology roadmaps now that should create the great big future next. So Rodrigo, that's where I get excited about. How do we manage this?
Remember that I spoke about an innovation trajectory dependence, okay? So it's all about innovation, okay? Interestingly, you spoke about the green hydrogen and so on. I'm developing a research project. It's in progress together with a university in Brazil and another university in Germany on biodiesel. Okay, which is somehow related with the green perspective and so on. And what we found so far, this is work in progress, okay? And that is related to what you were bringing. I totally agree with the roadmap. What we are working on today is what's coming up in the next 10 to 20 years, okay? So that's what we are trying to foresee. And we found this interesting fellow that is kind of hard to identify, this function called the intermediaries in the whole supply, in the whole social technique, the whole system. And those are the guys that will absorb the inputs from research, will understand the demands of the market, and will consolidate the supply and demand in one body. And they have a very, very expressive role in that. We are studying a few of those in Brazil, in Germany, and in here in the United States to try to figure how they work and the importance they have in this process. And guess what? Those are the guys that are consulted, for example, by lawmakers. And we have to understand the rationale of coevolution, okay, in this whole thing. We come up with a state-of-the-art technology that cannot simply be implemented because it's not regulated enough. And then some groups will come up, hey, they are bringing, harm for this and that groups and so on. For example, the batteries, the existing automakers, they got studies and presentation and peer-reviewed publications and so on in how environmentally harmful are batteries. Not the battery itself for the electric cars, but the process of manufacturing the battery. It's heavily energy consuming. And at one point, nobody did the math and say, okay, what about what's going on with emissions in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now? The rationale for technology in the roadmap is what's happening or what's going to happen in 10 years from now is a function of what happened till today. Okay, so this is the direction we should pursue. Those intermediaries, I'm fascinated, I'm studying more, but I'm getting a very interesting output in this process. Look, I have to apologize, but I must leave. It's 8:12 in my time, and I have a class starting at 8:30, and I still have to go to the university. Okay, so I'll be happy to answer more questions. You can simply send it to me. And thank you for this invitation and for this opportunity, okay? I really appreciate it.
I'd like to thank you for coming to the GIMI think tank. Just for everybody on the board, this is our editor for GIMI IOIP for the journal. And if anybody has got articles they wish to write on the topic of innovation, he is the person to submit this thing to. And he himself is a global expert on innovation, on technology forecasting, innovation management. And he's putting together frameworks that hopefully will drive a new way and a better way for us to be able to think about the future and implement that future today. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for being on our meeting today.
Thank you very much, Matendra. Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.